Hi, welcome to the DanCan show. Do you want to know how to get results? Do you want to be more successful? Do you want to initiate with people? At During this podcast, we're going to talk about how to take action, why to take action with one of the most prolific action takers I have ever met. Please have your journal and your pen. Get ready for action. Welcome to the Dan Can Show, where I love what I do and I do what I love, and so should you. This is a show for husbands, fathers, business leaders, or just leaders. In this show, we dive into how to live a life and run a business biblically. Today, our show, we have our first guest. And if I smile for 30 minutes, it's because I love this gentleman dearly and I spend a lot of time with him and he spends a lot of time with me. Today's show, we have a magnificent individual named Ethan. Ethan and I have known each other for quite some time, and we're going to dive into that. I do hope that you heard the intro in regards to having a journal and pen. You're going to need that today because you're going to hear about specific things that has really identified Ethan as a leader, as a wonderful husband, and a fantastic business leader here in the Spokane community. Ethan, why don't you say hi to everybody?
Hey guys, thanks Dan so much for having me. I'm super excited to be doing this podcast with you. And yeah,
Excellent. So, why don't you, at the beginning of every podcast, Ethan, I have a section where I talk about Genesis. The very first show, we talked about
yes.
Genesis 1 through 3. And really, your story is just fantastic. And so, we're going to start at the beginning. Why don't you share a little bit about yourself? We talked a little bit earlier about what that looked like. So, why don't you go ahead and just jump in and tell a little bit of your story?
Yeah. So I was born in Incheon, South Korea, and was adopted when I was 7 months old to my awesome parents, Christian and Stephanie, and then moved to Spokane when I was 7 months old. I don't remember any of it.
Yeah.
And yeah, growing up, I lived the stereotypical American life. I had two parents. They loved each other. They love each other very much. We went to church every Sunday. We played sports. We did all the things that you do when you're a kid. I was an extremely independent child. And with independence, when you're a kid, I think that can bring a lot of disobedience. So looking back now, I never liked being told what to do. And I got in a lot of trouble, whether it was with Sunday school teachers. I was good with coaches, though. I was always very respectful with coaches. So, that being said, my parents ended up homeschooling me up until I was in seventh grade. And then I think my mom, because my mom was the one that taught me every day, made the executive decision that I needed to go to public school. So I went to public school for 1 year, continued to get in trouble. And my parents said, hey, you can either go to school with your father, because my dad's in education and he can monitor you, or you can go to Northwest Christian High School. And I said, yeah, I'm going to go to Northwest Christian High School. I don't need my dad over my shoulder every day. But yeah, one of the biggest outlets growing up was sports. So my parents put us in track and field, football, wrestling, sports. I would say made up a huge part of like my parents, my two siblings, and my life. We did club sports. It was basically year round. So my whole life, ever since I was 3 years old, I wanted to play professional football or coach professional football. And fun fact, I'm not super tall, but up until sixth grade, I was in the top like 97th percentile. And I always say sixth grade was like my peak athleticism. I, I was faster than everyone, stronger than everyone. And I legitimately was like, I'm going to play Division I football.
Yeah,
That was my
absolutely.
thing. And everyone told me that too growing up. I was like, sweet, this is awesome. Like, I think it, everyone thinks it. And then I stopped growing. I don't think I grew more than an inch after seventh grade. So if you're 5'6.5", you have to be pretty freaking fast to have a shot at doing anything. Yeah, continued my athletic career in high school. I played football down in California for 1 year,
And
and I
this was in
realized,
this. I'm going to interject here. This you were playing
yeah,
collegiate football at this time.
collegiate football.
Yep.
Yeah, so my thoughts were I was going to go down to California and play junior college football because California is the pinnacle of
Yep.
junior college football. And then I was going to transfer to a Division II school or something like that. And this is what got me. It's like my first wake up call, and I don't know if it was a Lord thing, a God thing. I got down there. It was the first day of practice, and any type of passion I had for sports was just gone. It was just instantly gone. And I was like, oh, that's weird. Maybe it's because I'm not playing with all my friends or the coaches that I grew up with for a decade. But just every day I woke up and it was like, this is horrible. So I went into, I wouldn't say clinical depression, but it was the closest thing I've ever experienced towards to depression. And it was like, I guess football's not my thing, but I'll come back to Spokane. I'll go to Spokane Community College and I'll run track because I loved track. So I went to the falls and I ran track and I competed in one track meet. It was a indoor track meet at WSU, and I medaled in long jump first meet. And after that event, I realized that any passion I had for any sport was just gone. So that was like the wake up call where I was like, I'm not doing this because I love it. I'm doing it because this was my identity. And I
Yeah.
put all my identity in sports, and that's who I thought I was. So as soon as that track meet was over, I quit and did not know what I was going to do with my life. So I was going to school and I was working, I think, 3 jobs at the time, and I was just figuring things out. So that's my adolescent years. I'm not that old, so this wasn't that long ago.
Yeah, totally.
So,
Which you
moral of
often
the
bring up
story,
in our relationship, how much older I am than you, which
yeah, what is it,
I do
twice?
notice, by the
Not
way.
quite twice, not quite twice as old. But so that was my growing up, super normal family, sports, and then I think like a lot of kids, you put a lot of identity into
Yep.
sports because
Yeah. Yeah.
that's what you're around. So
Yeah.
that was from 3 years old to 19 years old was my life. It was just sports, hanging out with friends, and yeah, had awesome parents.
One of the great things about your story is, the Lord's hand on your life.
Yeah,
You had an opportunity to come to the United States. You had an opportunity to be in a loving family. And in our relationship, you've always honored your mother and father in the word, asked us to do that. The three pillars of this podcast is provide, protect, and promote. And I've really seen you do that. You protect your relationship with your family, your friends, and your genesis of how you got here to the United States of America is awesome. Why don't you share a little bit about how we first met? And then we'll jump into the genesis of your business career, just the beginning of it. So if you could just share with the team how we first met, because that's really
yeah,
the first action step that I noticed in your life. So why don't you go ahead and do that?
yeah. Like I mentioned, I was in school playing sports. And then once I was done playing sports, I was living back at home. So my parents were like, hey, you need to get a job. You need to get a job.
Good parents.
And yeah, they're like, you have too many speeding tickets not to have a job. Like so I was worked a couple restaurant jobs, and I then called one of my friends and said, hey, can you get me on at Kalispell Country Club mowing greens because they offered tuition reimbursement for students.
Oh, I didn't know that. Great.
So the caveat is you had to be working full time, and they had me working under 32 hours, so I never got it. But he got me the job at the country club, and I was mowing greens. I am not the best at driving stick shift, and I also was not super proficient at mowing greens. So I was bad at mowing the grass, and then I crashed a Workman. It was like a 4-speed Workman golf cart looking thing. And my boss said, "Hey, I don't know what to do." And I said, "How about you transfer me up to the members and I'll serve in the clubhouse?" And he's like, "Great, I'm going to put in the transfer right now." And I said, "Awesome, awesome." So I was serving tables and I was also extremely inefficient and not very good at serving tables. I don't know why. I don't know if it was the multitasking thing, but it was probably the thing I was worst at. There's this family that walks into the country club, and the bartender pulls me over and she's like, "Ethan, come here right now." And she was looked at me and she said, "Hey, you cannot screw this up." This was like a, and I'm like, "Okay." I was like, "Why?" And she's, "Do you know who that family is?" And I'm like, "No." And she said, "That's DanCan." And I'm like, "Great, never heard of him." I was like, "I've never heard of this guy." And she's, "Oh, he's the guy that's on the TV and radio." And my response to her was, or I don't know if it was in my head, I was like, "Well, he must not be that cool because I've never heard of him." And I know, and I know a lot of people.
You do.
I, so I go over to the table though, and I look at you right in the eyes and say, "Hey, you're the guy that's on the TV and radio." And I think you said one of your, "Oh yeah, that's great. It's so great to meet you." And I don't remember how it happened, but by the end of the your family eating dinner, you asked me what I wanted to do for a career. And at the time, the only thing I knew was sales. And I said, "I want to work in pharmaceutical sales." And you said, "You know what you need to do? You need to find mentors that work in pharmaceutical sales, ask them out to coffee, and pick their brain." And I said, "Great." I think 5 minutes later, you said, "Hey, ask me out to coffee, pick my brain. I'll help you get connected with some friends, executives, whatever that work in pharmaceutical sales." So you gave me your phone number. I lost it. I lost it. It was
Oh.
on a piece of paper. And I waited a week because I couldn't find it. I waited until Caleb, your son, came back to the country club. And I said, "Hey, can I get your dad's phone number?" And I text you and you said, I don't think you just said, "Hey, read this book, read it. Once you're done reading it, we'll meet for coffee." And the book was How to Win Friends and Influence People
Yeah.
by Dale Carnegie. I bought a used copy for $1.99 on Amazon, read it in 3 days, and then met you at your super janky office downtown Spokane.
Yeah. The armpit.
And
That's what we call
and
that one.
yeah, and so that's initially how we first met.
Let's do this. I want to add some sprinkles to that story here in a second. Let's take a break. We'll get a word from one of our sponsors. We jump in, we'll hear about the genesis of Ethan's unbelievable sales career and how he's doing just fantastic in real estate. All right, welcome back. So, Ethan, your genesis, you get to the United States, you're in a great family. Sports was a huge identity for you. I still remember watching you play in high school when you guys played up at Eastern, and what a fantastic running back you were. And I remember thinking, like, man, that guy's fast and he is determined. And then we met at the country club there, and I remember our first meeting and we talked a little bit about sales. And at that point, I said, "Hey, Ethan, what are you doing being a waiter? Why don't you go get licensed? Come work for me. I'll teach you how to sell. You can sell. You can say you work for a Berkshire Hathaway company or affiliate of it."
Yep.
And man, you did it. You went and got the test. One of the things about action is, first of all, you had the conversation with me. Secondly, you lost the number, which I can relate to, but you found a way to get the number through my son. You call me, you ordered the book at a discount, which is awesome. I love that part. You read the book, we got together, you got licensed, you came work for me. And this is where it's kind of funny because Ethan, you worked for me for what, 4 years? Is that right?
3 years on the dot.
3 years on the
Three
dot.
years almost on the dot. Yeah.
On the dot. And so one of the great things about when Ethan was working for me is Periodically, Ethan and I are both not supposed to be tied to a desk. We both know that. And Ethan was definitely tied to a desk. And so periodically, Ethan would come into my office and try to quit, and I would talk him out of it. And then the month when Ethan wouldn't come in to try to quit, my office manager would come in and try to fire him. And I would say, we're not firing Ethan. Ethan's not quitting, because I've always seen this tremendous talent in you. And at that point, he's selling for me, servicing. And then one day he comes in and he says, "Hey, I want to go into real estate." Now, I mentor some people. I have people that call me. And oftentimes, when people call me and asking me my advice about real estate, I tell them, don't do it. Because oftentimes people look at real estate agents and they think that it's easy job, and it's not. It's extremely hard. But when Ethan came and talked to me, I was like, yes, do it, because Ethan has these just intangibles that you can't teach, which is just this fortitude for action. Why don't you share with the audience why you chose real estate and what kind of piqued your interest? And we're going to talk a lot now about real estate and how you have been so successful for your customers that are investors and your customers that are buying and listing homes. But why don't you share what that genesis was for you, why you chose real estate?
Yeah, very short. You told me that I should start an insurance brokerage when I think a year and a half into me working for you. And you said you were going to help me. At the end of my tenure at Geico, you said, "Hey, I don't know if you should start an insurance brokerage in the current economic landscape."
Yeah.
And I'm like, so to backstory, so you told me, "Hey, don't work in pharmaceutical sales.
Yep.
You're not a corporate guy. You told me to start an insurance brokerage. I'll help you." And then I think 2.5 years in, you said, "Don't
Yeah.
do it right now. Maybe,
Well, what happened during
maybe
those two and
later."
a half years, though, Ethan?
We
It
had
wasn't
we
like
had COVID.
it
COVID.
wasn't like my
We had
opinion
COVID.
changed.
Yeah.
We a world economic stoppage
Yep.
play.
So I was like, okay. Basically, you said, "Hey, you're not going to make any money for a very long time." And I said, "Okay, don't want to do that." I was then in the process of buying and selling a house, and there was two things. I looked at the settlement statement, and if you're not around real estate a lot, you don't realize all the fees.
Yeah.
I looked at that and realized how much money I was losing,
Yeah.
which was tens and tens of thousands of dollars. And then I talked to my real estate agent, who was also my youth pastor way back when,
Okay.
and he told me, "You should get your real estate license." And then I said, "I thought all real estate agents are broke." And he said, "Not the good ones." And then he told me to read a book called The Millionaire Real Estate Agent, Keller
Yep.
Williams. So I read that book, said, "I don't know what else I'm going to do with my life right now," and got my real estate license.
Yeah.
That was it.
That was it.
That was
So,
it.
in your opinion, Ethan, in a for a fairly you haven't been in real estate for 15 years, right? Like you've been
Yeah.
going strong. And you really have reached some fantastic success. What do you feel as a real estate agent makes you unique? Why do you think customers they list with you, they pick you as the buyer's agent? In the third section, we're going to talk more about the investor side, but like what we call the retail side. Why do you feel like customers work with you?
Yeah. I would say I'm confident, concise, and always have their best interests in mind, which I know every real estate agent's going to say that. I'm a big numbers guy. So every zip code in Spokane, I can give you a synopsis of all the information. I'm studying stats, average days on market, what the average list price is versus accepted offer price. I have the data. And then extremely frugal. So every client, whether it's a buyer or a seller, I am treating them as if it's my house, like truly. So when I see that, I tell people no more than I tell them yes. And I
Yeah.
think clients really appreciate that because they'll look at a house and just say, "Hey, that's a horrible house."
Yep.
That's a super stupid financial decision, and you're going to have a lot of problems. And I think people like the bluntness,
Yeah.
but I do it in a way
Well, you
that
say it with
feels like
care,
they,
though. You
I
say it
say it
with
with
care.
care. It's
Yeah.
all with care, though. And I
Yeah.
think people really appreciate that. So that's what I would say, like, feedback after I help someone buy or sell a house.
Yeah.
I think that's probably what I get most is, "Hey, like, thanks for shooting it straight and
Yeah.
telling
And
it how
so
it is.
back to the original, like how you and I met, said, hey, go buy this book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. Like most people, they're going to go down to Barnes and Noble, they're going to do Amazon.com. You find a used book, like cost you, would you say $4, $3 or something like that?
That's like I think it was like $1.99,
Yeah,
something like that.
$1.99. And that concept, I've always appreciated that about you. You're a man of action when it comes to finances. You're a man of action when it comes to saving people money, looking at the overall cost of an item. Because in real estate, we're always dealing with big numbers and you can just get used to that. And the
Yeah,
customer, they're not used to those big numbers. Average American buys what, 3.25 houses or something like that. And so that was just a made up stat. I don't know what it is. And so not a lot. Like you and
yeah,
I, we buy 3 to 4 a quarter, correct? And
yeah,
it's easy for us to look at that and go, "Oh, this price, no big deal." But for someone who fundamentally is probably going to buy 3 to 4 houses their whole year, their whole life, those are huge numbers.
yeah,
And I love that part of your story when you said, "I looked at the closing statement and said, what?"
yeah,
And but you've kept that though with your customers and
yeah,
the feedback. You and I have done obviously multiple transactions together, but with one of my offices that I own, Ethan's been able to help two or three of them purchase homes. And it's so rewarding for me to hear their feedback on how they just really enjoy working with you. And you're an amazing, and this is one of the things I want the listeners to write down. Number one, networking relationships. Ethan is fantastic at initiating an action with networking and relationships. The second thing I want you to write down is being frugal. Ethan is fantastic at being frugal. Some of our most contentious times was when he was working for my insurance agency and we were going back and forth if he had earned a bonus or not. And so I appreciate that about him. We won't bring up the kind of dollar amounts we were being frugal about because this is a real estate show. But then also, as we progress, I actually would really love to know why you picked Keller Williams. I know the brand personally just because I've read his books, I've studied his brand, but I would like to know for you, you passed the test, like why did you pick Keller Williams?
yeah. You always told me you don't know what you don't know, so find someone that does.
Yeah, that's true.
So the reason I picked Keller Williams was one, didn't know anything. My real estate agent, Rick Flan,
Yeah,
at the
Rick.
time, worked at Keller Williams. And then another friend that I knew worked at Keller Williams, and I respect them both. And it was a no brainer. It was just, oh, Rick and my friend work at Keller Williams. I'm going to work there. Once I started, though, right, every brokerage says they offer something unique. Every company says they offer something unique, or they should.
Yeah,
The thing that stuck out to me most about Keller Williams was they said, "Hey, we're an open door company." So that's not just top down man, that's not just management, it's top down to the agents. So during my first training as a new agent at Keller Williams, the trainer said, "Hey, you can literally call any of the Keller Williams agents. Like it's a culture of helping people,
great.
learning, and so he's you can call any of the top agents at Keller Williams. They
That's
all are
great.
going to help you out." And that's what stuck because when you're new and you don't know anything, the
Yeah,
smartest thing you can do is find people that do know what they're doing.
yeah,
So I met with I think three or four agents right after that day, right after that training, purely because they said, "Hey, we're an open door company. We create a culture of it doesn't matter how many homes you sell, like everyone's here to help each other out."
yeah.
That was the sticking point where I was like, "Okay,
That's where I'm going.
I'm
All
going to
right,
Keller Williams."
let's do this. So just to overview, I mean, from a brand, right? This is a business family type show, right? Provide, protect, promote. So you want to provide for your family. You saw a brand where they literally said support, community, and you went with that. And that's great. And it's worked out well for you. We're going to take a break here. We're going to hear a word from our sponsor. Then we're going to jump into some actual deals and numbers that Ethan has taken action on that you can do yourself. This is going to be our break for a word from our sponsors. All right, welcome back. So that's from Wave Capital, and we definitely invest in real estate, and Ethan is a huge component of that. And so, what I like to dive into now as is so we have what we call the retail side of real estate, which is your buyers, people that are listing, sellers, and you've done fantastic in that realm. But I think you also, like when you were a football player, running back, you saw a hole, you saw opportunity, you took it, right? I think in the real estate world, you saw an opportunity with investors and you took action on it. What is it that you enjoy about working with investors? Because you do a great job with both retail customers and also investors. What is it that you enjoy about working with investors?
Yeah, it's very black and white. It's very emotionless, and it
Hmm.
all goes back to numbers. Like I told you earlier, I'm a big numbers person,
Yeah.
and numbers are super black and white. And I'm really good at operating like that. So it's a lot easier for me to work with someone and I tell them, no, this home's not the right fit. Don't buy it. And they're like, thank you. Versus if you're working with 8 buyers at a time, you're dealing with more emotions, which I really like. I love people. I love
Yep.
walking them through their stories of life. But it's also nice to have that other dynamic piece of it's just boom, it's all business. So it was really more a way for me to just keep my mind going, is why I really
Yeah.
was drawn to investors. And yeah, I really enjoy working with both, but it's really fun working with a couple investors that
Yeah.
you can work hand in hand with.
Yeah, so last quarter, first quarter, what we sold and listed, what, three, four or five houses together, whether off market or retail listings.
Yeah,
We typically, if we're going to do three or four, we're looking at anywhere from what, 12 to 28, 29. And so well, that's one of the things that as an investor that obviously has listed and bought with you is that just what you talked about. I know the zip codes, I know the days on market, I know this demographic of area. Like this house is going to sit for a little bit. We just got to be prepared for that. Or this one here is going to go quick. And that's what's funny about this game called real estate, right? Like one listing, we have 30 people show up over the weekend. We have four offers, right?
yeah,
And we thought, oh yeah, that might do okay, but it just blew our mind. And then now we have another one where we thought for sure it was going to just go like that, and we've had three showings and no offers.
yeah,
And so it's just that's the name of the game. And so
yeah,
when what you bring to the table is being that person of action is that when we find off market properties, you initiate with people that we know that want to buy them.
yeah,
You don't passively do a social media post. You call people. One of my favorite stories from you, and this is going to the retail side, but it does definitely apply to the investor side, is you told me, and I might get the numbers wrong and all that stuff, but you told me you were working with a customer and you showed her some houses, some other things, and then she said, hey, don't call me anymore. I'm not going to buy a house. And
yeah,
then, like, I think it was like a couple months or a month later, you saw this house that she basically had been talking about for months. Not she didn't know this particular house was for sale, but you saw that it was new for sale. And you called her and you said, hey, I know you told me not to call you, but this house is what you've been telling me you want. And that's what's so unique about you is that, wait a minute, this customer really wants this. And although she said no, I'm going to initiate one more time. It just shows radical dedication and professionalism because fundamentally she could have just said no, but then she went ahead and bought the house and loved it. And so when
yeah.
you come to the real estate side, I'm going to pivot a little bit. You're obviously an investor with me with Wave Capital, and what is it about working with me that you enjoy in regards to the Wave Capital side of things?
Yeah, so you're an over communicator, which is great. You always make it fun to be a part of. So you're a storyteller, and it's different than just calling your financial advisor and asking them, "Hey,
Yeah,
I
that's
saw
true.
I saw the S&P drop from 42 or the Dow dropped from 42,000 to 37,000," and then he's like, "Yeah, just
Yeah,
hold."
yeah,
You're
yeah.
which is great, right? You want
You got
that.
to have that financial
Uh,
arm. Yes, you do
but
need to have that.
yeah, you make everyone feel like they are part of the story. So you
Yeah,
give great updates, you send funny stories of what you're investing in homes wise, and yeah, you just bring people along the journey,
Yeah.
and
So
you
our,
never have to question anything because you know that you're always updating people, probably more than most people need to be updated. But
that is some feedback I have gotten from investors, predominantly those in the East Coast. And so now when I onboard a new investor, I actually have put that on my onboarding questions is, hey, listen, I'm a big communicator, so I need to know right now, how much do you want me to talk to you? Because I have had feedback like, hey, lay off the text. Hey, great. You'll get one every four. I just want you to know that I'm glad you're on the team and I hope you like making money in your sleep because I sure do. And I think what's great about you and I working together is oftentimes if you read the business books, they say, hey, listen, you want to partner with someone that isn't so like you have differences. What's been interesting about our partnership is that we're very similar. I'm the son of two immigrants, just like you. I played sports in college and I played rugby and fell into kind of real estate because I just read a bunch of books and everyone always talked about real estate. And one of my mentors really encouraged me to get back into real estate. And so when we find these off market deals, you are the master negotiator. And for those that are listening that think about investing in Wave and investing with Ethan, I just want you to know that this gentleman is an amazing negotiator. And he always has the best interest in mind of not only the people that are selling, but also the investors that are buying. And that's just a rare tool to have. And so that's what I've really enjoyed about working with Ethan. On the retail side, if you're looking to list or to buy a home, Ethan is a maven. That's someone who studies the market and the numbers, and you can be assured of his professionalism. And he's won awards with Keller Williams. He's often recognized for his sales, but also his customer service, his referrals that he gets from his sphere is fantastic. And that really, for me as a business owner, I know that when I'm getting referrals from current customers, I've always taken that as like a badge of honor. Like in football, collegiate football, they hand out hash marks, or in high school, they hand out hash marks as a, hey, you earned this. It was above and beyond. For me as a business owner, referrals is that hash mark. And you definitely have built a great business on that. We're going to take a short break. We're going to hear a word from our sponsors, and we're going to do our last segment, which is Law of 72. There it was, DanCan Insurance Agency, where you started your sales career. All right. So, Ethan, you talk to a lot of people about real estate,
yes,
and you talk to people that are just wanting to get started investing in real estate. I know that you've had these conversations with
yeah.
people over the years. What do you like? There might not be three, but we're Americans. We like things in thirds. What are the top three reasons you think people don't invest in real estate after initiating with you?
Don't invest in real estate, as in purchase and
Yeah.
sell.
Purchase and flip, wholesale, whatever. Like someone like, hey, I love real estate. They talk to you about real estate. I want to be a real estate agent. I want to flip homes. They initiate with you and they don't do anything. Like, what do you think are the top three reasons? Because you're a man of action.
Yeah,
And so we're going to land this plane here on how people can get involved, either investing or buying or,
yeah. Yeah, I would say it's very simple. It's time, capital, and the unknowns.
yeah.
A lot of it's very simple.
Yeah. So what do you think is time?
A lot of people are they'll meet with me, they'll maybe meet with someone else, and then that's it. They never put in the time to feel confident in taking action to make the decision to get into real estate.
Yeah.
I would say everyone you see everything on Instagram. Everyone's real
Yeah.
estate gurus. Everyone gets something in their news feed from a realtor or an investor. They see that as, oh, that's a good idea. They might send me a text and then it falls off.
Yeah, and on the capital side, right? This is a rich man's game. You've heard me say that almost every week, right? If you're going to flip a home, you have to have capital. These gurus and teachers out there are saying that you can get into real estate with no money and all these other things. Is I don't know where that can even be said in our experience, right? Like that one house that we had
Yeah.
on Rowan, it was bought at auction. We bought it at 50% of value. This thing is amazing. And then wham, 15 grand sewer line from the house to the alley.
Yeah.
15,000. Where's that guy that says you don't need any money to flip a house? Like that was real money. That was 15, and that was just the sewer line, right? Is yeah, you have to have capital. That's one of the benefits of us working together. You're obviously an investor in Wave Capital, and we partnered in some real estate deals as in addition to that. And so when you have an opportunity to have experts like you and I working that, if you don't have time, that's what a lot of my investors have said is I'll ask them, hey, why are you working with me? And they're like, listen, I just don't have the time or energy that you have. You
Yeah.
have this energy, and I've always had energy. It's just something like obviously in junior high and elementary school, I've shared this many times. My report card said, pleasure to have in class, talks too much. Okay, great. We're all hanging out. We might as well be talking. And that's what we do all
Yeah.
day long, right? Is we're talking to investors, we're talking to sellers, we're talking to buyers. You had mentioned over communicate. And those three things. So, from an action standpoint, when we're talking to someone that wants to sell at a discount, there's
Yes.
usually some kind of distress situation.
Yeah.
And that's where the fine line between, hey, I want to help you in your problem, but you have to understand the problem was created by something, not us as the
Yeah.
investors, right? Whether that's they have to move quickly or they inherited a house and they live 500 miles away and they just want the capital. Like we help people with their problems. And so when you are that man of action, and let's say right now, Ethan, somebody's thinking about becoming an investor. Or sorry, they're thinking about getting into real estate to invest. Whether
Yes.
they're looking to flip homes, they're looking to wholesale, they're looking to just put money into a like Wave Capital, a fund. What action steps would you encourage that listener to do right now? So they have their pen and paper, they have their journal, they're listening to Ethan. What are the three things that you think they should do?
Yeah. I would say after talking to me, talk to someone else to get a second opinion because I don't want them to rely solely on
Yeah,
what I
yeah.
say. It's a huge decision to get into real estate, whether you're giving someone $100,000 or you're looking to deploy $100,000 into a property, right? So get a second opinion, do your research online, and really just find the answers to all of your questions. If I have something that I'm thinking about, I sit and dwell on it for a second, and then I'm like, who do I know that knows the answer to this?
Yeah,
That can,
absolutely.
and that's really what you know real estate is: finding solutions to the problems and then taking action. And if you're looking to get into real estate, the solution to the problem is finding people that you can talk to, I think.
Yeah.
That can give you the peace of mind to make the decision whether you're going to do it or not. And you might say, hey, this isn't for me. I'm not. But you need to find that answer.
See, this is one of the great things
Yeah.
about Ethan. So he talked about black and white, and I don't know if the audience really heard what you just said there, so I want to repeat it. It was a very black and white statement. If you want to get into real estate, it's a really big decision. And that's what people don't understand because of those Instagram feeds, because of fix and flip my house on TV and all this other stuff. They think like it's this instantaneous, easy thing, and it's not. Like it's a whole industry, right? It's a driver for our economy is real estate. And so you really want to think, and I loved what you said about find a mentor. The most powerful book that I've read, which I went over last week, was The Power of Who. And that's a book about having a network, communicating to your network in regards to what your goals are, and then also helping other people with their goals. And hopefully, in this podcast, you've heard Ethan and I working with one another, helping each other, helping the community. We take so many of these homes that are just not good and we make them fabulous. So much so, Ethan and I have gotten feedback from the neighbors thanking us for kicking out people that were a nuisance and making a house and bringing in families that want to build a community. Ethan, if somebody wants to meet with you or talk to you in regards to getting in, obviously as a real estate agent or an investor, or if they're like, hey, is Dan really the guy that he says he is when it comes to Wave Capital? If they want to get a hold of you, what's the best way for them to get a hold of you?
Yeah, it's by call or text. You can reach out to me at 509-828-2783. That's 509-828-2783. Always say it twice.
Because every good salesperson says their phone number twice. All right. So here's our action points. This was a podcast about action. I hope you've heard and seen what Ethan has done in such a wonderful testimony of taking action. If you want to get involved in real estate, grab those books, grab those podcasts, do the education, call Ethan, call other people in your sphere. If you want to earn money passively, get a hold of me. I would love to talk to you about what it's like to invest with Wave Capital. If you want a verbal testimonial, call Ethan. He'll tell you what it's about. And I'll ask you, how much do you want me to communicate with you? All right, DanCan listeners, you know how I end our episode. Love well and do good. Thank you so much, Ethan.
Yeah, thanks for having me.